So it is different from one area to another. In the West Bank and East Jerusalem, children are exposed to different types of violation, and this includes detention, arrest, threats of home demolitions, settlers' violence, violations on education. So I can't say that all Palestinian children are not safe and they are exposed to these violations, and it's different. If I want to start talking about the main right, which is right to life, I can tell you that since the year of 2000, DCIP has documented the killing of around 2,200 Palestinian children. The majority of these children were killed in the repeated Israeli military offensives on the Gaza Strip, and the rest were killed in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. This year only, we have documented the killing of 77 children. 61 were killed in the Gaza Strip and 16 in the West Bank. And when we talk about the killing of the Gaza Strip, and if we want to shed some light on the latest Israeli assault on the Gaza Strip, we want to say, okay, these are 61 children who are killed, but it's not only like this. These were children who had their dreams, who had their families, their friends, their lives. These children had their friends who now miss them. So it doesn't only affect the families, it also affects the friends of them. And I want to tell you that 11 of these children who were killed in the Gaza Strip were receiving psychological support in order to get over the trauma they have developed as a result of the previous military assaults on the Gaza Strip. So when we say killing, it's not only a life lost. It's much more than that. Speaking of the 16 children who were killed in the West Bank, they were killed with live ammunition. And the only case a soldier can do that is when there is a real threat on their lives. But all the evidence collected by DCIP shows that children who were killed and shot with live ammunition were not causing or showing any threat to the soldiers' lives. Some of them, one child, for example, was in a car with his father, and his father had to make a U-turn and he was shot and killed instantly. Another child was chanting his friend's name, who was also killed by Israeli forces and was also shot with live ammunition in Beta. And it always happens that these Israeli soldiers who shoot these children are not held accountable. So there is full impunity when these incidents happen. This is speaking about the main right, which is right to life. But we can also talk about settlers' violence, for example, and settlers' attacks. This year, we saw and we witnessed a rise in the settlers' violence. For example, this year, we documented a case of a child who was taken by Israeli settlers. They drove him on the car, they tortured him, they hung him on a tree. And this is just one child of many other children. Some settlers attack a whole village and attack the homes of the people who are living in the villages, throw stones at houses where there are children who have then to deal with the trauma. Since January, till August of this year, OCHA, which is the UN Office for Coordination of Humanitarian, have documented the cases of 321 settlers' attacks on Palestinians. I can also talk about violation on education. And when we say violation on education, I mean that children who are in these schools are violated either on their way to the school or back from school, or even when they are in their classes, either from the Israeli settlers or from Israeli forces. Um, Israeli forces can raid the schools throw tear gas canisters at school, detain children. And from October 2019 until October 2021, we have documented the cases of 274 violation on education. Also, children are vulnerable and at the risk of their houses being demolished by Israeli authorities. In 2021, which is this year, we have documented 27 home demolitions, and this affected in total 100 Palestinian children, some of which, for example, those children who are living in the Jordan Valley, some of the families' houses were demolished at least 8 times in this same area, but they're still rebuilding it and living, and this leaves its effect on the children. The last violation I'm gonna talk about, and the last right I'm gonna mention in this session, is the right to liberty. So in our work, we document the detention and arrest of the Palestinian children. And it is important to mention that each year between 500 to 700 Palestinian children are detained, arrested, and prosecuted in the Israeli military court system. And it happens to be that Israel is the only country that prosecutes children in military courts that lacks fair trial. And what we focus in our work when it comes to the detention of the children is the ill treatment and torture these children have to go through. Since the moment of the arrest, since the moment of the soldiers going to the houses of these children until they are released or charged and receiving their sentence, they go through different types of violations. First of all, the majority of the cases of the children are arrested during the nighttime. So usually these soldiers would go raid the house while the children are sleeping in the middle of the night, and they ask them their names. When they make sure it's them, they tell them, we're arresting you. And at that moment, the violations and abuses start. When they blindfold the children, when they handcuff the children, when they don't tell them or their families the reason behind the arrest or where they are going, or not even giving them the arrest warrant. And at that moment as well, Israeli soldiers separate the family and lock them in a separate room in order to prevent any potential resistance. And this moment has its huge psychological effect on children, because at that moment they feel that even their home isn't safe and none of their parents or family members are around them to protect them. And the violations keep going. Israeli soldiers, according to our documentation, children have told us that during the transfer from their home to the military jeep to the interrogation center, children are beaten, they are kicked, they are exposed to both psychological, or more than both, I would say, psychological, verbal, and physical abuse. And this continues until they are charged. I'm not gonna take much time speaking about the different stages these children go through when they are detained. I want to share a video with you about the story of a child who was detained 3 times. His name is Ubaida. I want you to know that Ubaida, when we filmed with Ubaida 2 years ago, in 2019, he was already arrested for 2 times. He was arrested twice. And then after that, after we filmed with him, he was arrested for the 3rd time. And this year, during the Israeli military assault on the Gaza Strip that took place in May, demonstrations took place also in the West Bank and everywhere here in Palestine. And Ubaida was in one of these demonstrations when he was shot with live ammunition and was killed instantly. Ubaida, unfortunately, is not here with us today. He was shot few weeks before he became 18 years old. So he didn't even have the chance to pass the childhood period. He was killed three weeks before his 18th birthday. He was also shot weeks before graduating high school and starting his own professional career. When he was shot, the Israeli forces stopped the ambulance from reaching out to him and transferring him to the hospital. I'm gonna leave you now with the story of Ubaida because he speaks about his experience and what he has been through, and it's similar to many Palestinian children's experiences.